Welcome to Computer Tips, Tricks, and Shortcuts. If you have a question, leave us a comment and we will try to answer your question. Now, let's get started. Okay, so we are in Pivot Table Part 3. In this pivot table, we're going to do a lot of cool things. We're going to add an item to our main database and then update our pivot table. We're also going to look at our data source, the data where our pivot table is feeding from, to make sure we're capturing everything we need to capture in our pivot table. We also are going to take our finished pivot table, turn it into a standalone database that can be changed, emailed to someone, and you don't have to worry about links attached to your email. The person that gets it is going to be a database ready for them to manipulate if they want. So the first thing we're going to do is add an item to our main database. You can't add items into the pivot table, directly into the pivot table, because it is feeding from our main database. So let's go to sheet 1 where that is, and we're going to add a new item we're going to be carrying. The item is a desktop printer, so let's add the item number and then the description. Let's capitalize it, desktop printer. It's going to come from Office Supply, and the cost of this printer is going to be $60 to us. Arrow over, and we already had formulas in these cells, so it automatically populates. So let's look at the formulas really quick. In E16 we have the formula, as you can see up here in the formula bar, equal D16 times, which is an asterisk in Excel. When you multiply, you use an asterisk, 160%. That is multiplying the cost by itself, 100%, and then adding 60%, which gives you the result of $96. That's much easier than calculating something like D16 times 60% and then adding those together. This does it all in one step in this formula. Now we're going to arrow over, and we have 0 in inventory right now. We're going to order 200. So our total that we're going to have in inventory will be 200 because there's nothing in inventory at this time. Our total cost on the order is going to be the formula multiplying the cost, which is in D16, and then multiply it by how many printers we're ordering. So it would be equal G16 times D16. That gives us $12,000. The total cost on our final inventory is the same because we have none in stock right now. So when we get all the printers in, our total cost on the final inventory will be the $12,000, and that is multiplying the total times the cost. Arrow over, and we've got the total retail price on our final inventory, and that is simply taking what we're ordering in H16, or the total inventory we're going to end up with in H16, which is 200, multiply it by the retail price of $96. So it is equal E16, the retail price, times H16, the total in inventory. That gives us a final retail price of $19,200. The column over is the total profit on the final inventory. So that's going to take the cost, subtract that from the retail price. So the formula would be equal K16, the retail price on the final inventory, minus the total cost on our final inventory, giving us $7,200 in profit. So we've added that item to our spreadsheet of our inventory. Now we need to make sure it appears on our pivot table. So let's go to sheet 2. It's not here That is because pivot tables don't automatically update. We have to update them. So clicked in the pivot table, we go to our contextual tabs. Those are the tabs created when you are in a pivot table. We need to go to the pivot table analyze. Older versions of Excel would just say analyze. It's the same tab. Click there. We're going to go to refresh, and there we have our desktop printer added to our pivot table with a new total. The $35,792, that is the total cost on our order. Let's double check that price. Total cost on order, same number. Another good trick to check your numbers is to make sure that your formula is capturing all the cells you intend it to capture, so your accounting is correct. So in the column I-17, we have the total of $35,792.65. Well, let's make sure that that formula is capturing all the cells that we want. You can look up here in the formula bar. It does tell us it's capturing I2 and I16 and all the cells in between. That's what the colon tells us. But sometimes you have formulas that are capturing different cells, maybe not all the cells that are in the column. You just need to make sure sometimes that your formula is doing what you want. So clicked in I-17, you can go up to the top of your keyboard and click F2 key. That will highlight all the cells that are in that formula so you can verify everything is being captured and you won't have a problem. Now looking back at our pivot table, if for some reason the printer had not shown up when I refreshed, that means there's a problem with the pivot table or the data source that it's pulling from. You always want to check your data source when you're adding items, columns, because if you have a very large spreadsheet, you might miss that the pivot table is not capturing something. So another way to verify your data in the pivot table is click in the pivot table. You want to go to Pivot Table Analyze, change data source, and then it's going to show you what data is being captured for that pivot table. When I first created this pivot table in the pivot table video 1, I had highlighted all the columns so I don't have to worry when I add a row that it'll just capture it. If I want to add something in another column, say column M, I do need to adjust this. You can go up to this box, click backspace, and change that to M. Say OK, but we have an error. That error is there because column M does not have a header. You have to have a header in every column that you're capturing for a pivot table or it won't take it. So let's do that. So say OK, cancel. Let's go to our database and we're going to add information in column M. Let's add sales tax. So the formula for our sales tax will be equal the total retail price on the final inventory times asterisk 7.75% is our sales tax in our stores area. Hit enter. So now we have our sales tax for row 2. We want to carry this formula down to all the other rows. Hover to the bottom of your cell to the right. Your cursor will turn into a black cross. Mine stays in a white arrow. It's okay. Just yours will turn into a black cross. Hold down on the left mouse button and drag down your formula. Another way you can drag a formula down, let's undo this, is you go to the same spot in the bottom right corner When it's the black cross, you double click and it will drag it down for you. The one thing you have to be aware of, and when you have a really large spreadsheet, you might not notice or see something, is if you have a blank row in your spreadsheet, the formula will stop. So, for instance, let's add a row here. On our home tab, we've got insert row. And let's again go up here and carry our formula down by double clicking, and it stops right where there's a blank cell. So be aware of that. Make sure. That's why you can always go to the formulas at the bottom and make sure they're capturing everything you need it to capture. If it stops in a place and you need it to go down, you can go down to the bottom corner again and drag it down to where you need it. So let's go back up here and bring our formula down. And then now we need to add our total to M17. So we'll go to L17, which has the formula that we're going to need, and we're going to drag it over. And when I drag it over, Excel will adjust to capture M2 through M16. So we're going to go to the bottom right corner again and drag over. And then we can click in our cell and we see it's capturing all of the cells. We can hit F2 on the top of the keyboard. Yes, it's capturing everything we need. So all our numbers are good, capturing everything. So since we've added the new column, now we want our pivot table to be able to capture it. So let's go back to pivot table. Clicked in pivot table, you're going to go to pivot table analyze, change data source, change data source. Now we can see it's not capturing our last column. It could be a problem if you're not capturing everything in your database that you need to. We can go back up to this box, backspace, put an M, say OK, and now it has captured column M because it has a header, and then we've got the data in there. You can see sales tax is now added to our pivot table fields. If we want it in our pivot table, we just click the box, and there we are. It's added in. Now we need to send this information to our boss. We don't want to send our boss the main database, the pivot table. All they want to see is what we've put together on this pivot table. I never send spreadsheets to people to review, look at, analyze with links, with VLOOKUP formulas, any kind of formulas, pivot tables that are dependent on another spreadsheet. So what we want to do is make this a standalone spreadsheet that we can email, and you don't have to worry about somebody messing up a formula, deleting information. If they mess up the spreadsheet you send them, they can always go back to the original one that you sent them and start over, but this is how we're going to do it. You're going to go down to the tab that the pivot table's on, and you're going to right click, and you're going to go to move or copy. Then we're going to click on the box at the bottom here, create copy. Up here, we want to say we want a new book. We want a whole new file. We don't want anything to do with this spreadsheet. We want a new file that we're going to send that's not going to be associated with our working pivot table and database. Say OK. And now you've got a brand new file that's separate. Although it is a pivot table still, and it's still depending on that original database, so we have to break that link. And how we do that is we're going to copy the pivot table. You can copy this spreadsheet or pivot table up here between the 1 and the A. Highlights the whole spreadsheet. Or you can just copy just the section of the pivot table. You could copy or highlight all the rows. Either way, it's going to accomplish the same thing. So we highlighted the area of the pivot table, we're going to go to copy, and then we're going to go to paste. Click on the bottom arrow, and you want to go to paste values. So paste values, what that does is it gets rid of any formulas. If you had a spreadsheet with formulas, VLOOKUPs, links, gets rid of all the formulas. Nothing's there that's dependent on anything else. So when you email this spreadsheet, it's going to have these hard numbers that they can see, that they won't mess up a formula. And like I said, if they do something wrong here, they can just go into the original email and open up this sheet again. Also, this way, they are free to manipulate this little database as they wish. You can change the header row. You could just put on order. We don't really need sum of, because that's just part of a pivot table verbiage. We could get rid of sum of on the sales tax. You can center these columns, highlight them, go up to center align. You can change the format to make this currency, which it should be. So you highlight, right click, format cells, and then we're going to change it to currency. Make sure our dollar symbol is here. If it's not, you're going to click here and put it there. We want 2 decimal places and say OK. So in Excel, some of those figures did have 3 decimal places. It's going to round up or down. If it's 5 or above, it'll round up. 4 and down, it will round down. And that's what your figure is. So you could do other things to the spreadsheet before you send it, just depending on who you're sending it to and how you want it to look. You could put a cell format by going to styles and clicking a new cell style or a header or whatever you like, whatever you think that they like, how they like their spreadsheets, what's easier for them to read. So let's just click this. Now before I send this database to my boss, I'm going to name it. And I'm going to name it with the date that I created it. So I know what day she received the items and the inventory. Because a week later, the items might change. What's on order is going to change. Everything's going to change in a week. So I know when the last time was that she received this information, and I might need to send her a new updated version in a week. It just helps you keep track, knowing what you sent your boss, and knowing that they might need an updated version. So I'm going to name it. So we're going to save. I have the little save icon on my quick access toolbar, and we're going to name it items on order. Don't put spaces in your file names. It just is not good. You can use an underscore in lieu of a space. And then we're going to say as of November underscore 1 underscore 2019. And then you're going to click save. So now when she gets this spreadsheet emailed to her, she knows that this is what's on order as of November 1st. She might not look at it for a couple days. She knows that maybe on the 2nd, she sent in an order for something else or sent me a request to order more of portable fans. So showing her that the orders are as of November 1st, she knows that that new order that she requested is not in this data. So it just really helps you keep track of what was sent and when the person needs an updated version. So she gets this spreadsheet, and now she's able to even add a formula. So let's say in this spreadsheet, I didn't send her the unit cost of each item. I just sent the total cost and how many we ordered. So she wants to see, well, how much does each item cost? So she could put a formula in herself in G4. The formula would be equal the total cost divided by, which is the backslash in Excel, what's on order, enter. So that's telling her that the computer speakers are $20.99 each. We could click here. We could double click on the bottom right, bring that formula down. Let's title our column unit price. And then the last thing is we want the columns to match. So we can highlight column F. We like this format. We're going to hit our format painter, which is copying the formatting in this column, and we're going to apply it to column G. Just go up here to the G, click with your left mouse, and it copies the formatting to this column so it all looks the same. So that's it, how you can send a pivot table to someone else with no links, formulas. If she wants to send this to someone else, she should probably get rid of the formulas in G, and all she does is, as we did earlier, copy and paste values, and then she could send that on and formulas will not get messed up. So more videos to come on pivot tables, VLOOKUPs, anything else that you send me in your comments. Let me know what you would like to have videos on, and thank you so much for watching.